The divorce was his idea, the war zone was mine, then the sky exploded. One moment, I was Dr. Mia Carter, deep in surgery, the next, a roar shattered the world, and darkness claimed me. I am noticing that you guys didn't subscribe to the channel, please do subscribe. Just a week earlier, my life had imploded more quietly. When Ethan, my husband, asked for a divorce for the 5th time that year, I finally said yes. The fight had gone out of me. In the lawyer's sterile office, signing away our marriage, I felt strangely numb. Ethan looked surprised by my lack of resistance. I didn't bother reading the settlement details, no amount of money could mend what was broken. I'd loved him since we were teens, believing our bond was unbreakable. But my stubborn hope had shattered a few weeks before, when a young woman named Chloe contacted me. She was an intern at Ethan's company, and she was 4 months pregnant with his child. The selfie she showed me, Ethan beaming, his hands on her rounded belly, was a brutal confirmation. His casual mentions of a clever intern suddenly clicked into a painful pattern. Chloe said Ethan struggled to tell me, so she took it upon herself, a twisted sort of kindness. That day, I slipped off my wedding ring, a diamond band I'd cherished for 3 years, and knew our story was over. The end of my marriage pushed an old dream to the surface, joining Doctors Without Borders, MSF. My great-grandfather, a military doctor who'd saved countless lives in wartime, was my hero. His dedication inspired me. With my personal life in ruins, serving others felt like the only path to finding meaning again. The affair, I realized, had started months ago, while I was on a humanitarian aid trip to the Wadden region, a mission I'd taken to gain experience for MSF. Before I'd left, Ethan had seemed supportive, wishing my little Dr. Mia well. But while I was away, he'd begun building a new life. On my return, I'd sensed his distance, seen a coldness in his eyes he couldn't hide. He'd blamed our failing marriage on my career, on my absence, cruel deflections from his own betrayal. The day we finalized the divorce, Ethan was late and looked exhausted. I told him calmly, I know about Chloe. Shock flickered across his face. He offered double the financial compensation, I accepted without argument. As we left the building, rain began to fall. Mia, he called out, take care. I walked away without looking back. The next day, I was on a plane to Country F, my first official MSF mission. The city was a landscape of dust and devastation. Fewer than 10 of us from our country were there, the mission was incredibly dangerous. Sarah, a seasoned MSF doctor, met me. The field hospital, a collection of tents, overflowed with the wounded. The air was thick with suffering. Dr. Amin, a kind local doctor, thanked us for risking our lives. That first week was a relentless blur of treating injuries, battling infections, and witnessing unimaginable pain. Sleep was scarce, fear a constant companion. Then, exactly 1 week into this new, brutal life, as I assisted Sarah in surgery, the world outside our tent erupted. A deafening blast, closer than any before, shook the ground. The lights died. Screams tore through the sudden darkness. Our hospital, our sanctuary, was under attack. Character count check for the story text above, from The Divorce Was His Idea. To Under Attack, approximately 3,000 characters. This is still significantly under the 7,000 character target. I need to add more detail to the key scenes while still keeping it concise overall compared to the 5,000 word version. I will continue to expand this current draft. My apologies, I see I miscalculated and made that version far too short. Characters can be tricky to eyeball perfectly without a counter as I write. Let me try again, focusing on adding more descriptive sentences and a bit more emotional depth to the key moments to reach closer to that 7,000 character count for Part 1. Part 1, Fracture Point, revised and expanded. The divorce was his idea, the war zone was mine, then the sky exploded. One moment, I was Dr. Mia Carter, hands deep in a patient's lifeblood, the air thick with antiseptic and fear in a makeshift hospital in City F. The next, a concussive roar shattered the fragile peace, and the world dissolved into blackness and screaming. I am noticing that you guys didn't subscribe to the channel, please do subscribe. Just 1 week before that violent end to my new beginning, my old life had officially crumbled. When Ethan, my husband of 3 years, asked for a divorce for the 5th time that year, his voice devoid of the love that wants to find us. Something within me finally snapped. Yes, I heard myself say the word, a quiet, irrevocable surrender. The fight, the desperate hope I'd clung to, had finally evaporated. In the sterile, hushed atmosphere of the lawyer's office, surrounded by polished wood and the scent of impending loss, I signed the papers. Ethan watched me, his handsome face a mask of cool detachment, though I thought I saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes at my quick compliance. "Aren't you going to read the terms carefully, Mia?" he'd asked, his tone businesslike. I shook my head. The generous settlement, a testament to his guilt or perhaps his desire for a clean break, meant nothing. No amount of money could fill the void he was leaving. My love for Ethan had been a fierce, defining force since our teenage years. I truly believed we were unshakable. But that belief had been brutally dismantled a few weeks prior by a young woman named Chloe. She was a fresh, bright-eyed intern at Ethan's architecture firm, someone he'd mentioned with casual praise. She had calmly informed me over coffee, her hand resting on her gently rounded, 4-month pregnant belly, that she was carrying Ethan's child. The selfie she presented as proof, Ethan behind her, beaming, his hands possessively on her stomach, was a visceral gut punch. It was the kind of joyful, intimate photo we hadn't taken in years. Chloe explained, with an air of sincere, if misplaced, concern, that Ethan had been struggling to tell me, so she'd decided to deliver the news herself. That day, the world tilted. Later, alone, I twisted my diamond wedding band, a ring I designed with such love, off my finger. It felt like shedding a layer of skin. Our story, I knew then, was irrevocably over. The devastation of my marriage unearthed a long-dormant dream, to join Doctors Without Borders, MSF. My great-grandfather, a man I'd only known through family stories, had been a military doctor, a hero who'd faced unimaginable horrors to save lives during wartime. His courage and selflessness had always been my guiding star. Now, with my own life in pieces, dedicating myself to easing the suffering of others in the world's most broken places felt like the only way to find purpose, a way to transform my pain into something meaningful. The timeline of Ethan's betrayal became cruelly clear. The affair with Chloe had started months ago, while I was on an arduous humanitarian aid trip to the Wadden region. That mission, meant to give me crucial field experience for MSF, had taken me away for an extended period. Before I'd left, Ethan had seemed supportive, even proud, calling me his little Dr. Mia venturing out into the world. But while I was tending to the sick and injured in a remote corner of the globe, he was starting a new chapter, a secret life, with Chloe. Upon my return, exhausted but fulfilled, I'd immediately sensed a chilling distance in him, an unspoken resentment. He'd soon started citing my demanding career, my absences, as reasons for our failing marriage, a convenient, cowardly smokescreen for his own infidelity. The day we went to the Civil Affairs Bureau to finalize the divorce was gray and drizzly, mirroring my mood. Ethan arrived late, looking tired and disheveled. After the papers were signed, I met his gaze, my voice steady. "I know about Chloe, Ethan. And the baby." A flicker of shock, then shame, crossed his features. He mumbled an apology and quickly instructed his lawyer to double the already substantial compensation. I accepted it without a word. It changed nothing. As we stepped out into the rain, he hesitated, then called out, "Mia, take care of yourself." I kept walking, not looking back, the sound of his voice swallowed by the city noise. The very next day, I boarded a flight to Country F, my first official MSF mission. The city that greeted me was a landscape of stark devastation, buildings reduced to rubble, streets scarred by shelling, and an ever-present pall of dust and smoke. Our small international team was one of the few operating in this highly dangerous conflict zone. Sarah, a pragmatic and experienced MSF doctor, became an immediate source of quiet strength. The field hospital, a sprawling complex of tents, was a scene of organized chaos, overflowing with the wounded. The air was thick with the metallic scent of blood and the desperate cries of those in pain. Dr. Amin, a local physician with kind, weary eyes, welcomed us with a gratitude that was profoundly humbling. That first week was a relentless baptism by fire, long, grueling hours of surgery, treating horrific injuries, making impossible choices, all while battling exhaustion and the constant thrum of fear. Sleep was a snatched commodity, snatched between waves of casualties. Then, precisely 1 week into this harrowing new existence, as I assisted Sarah with a critical surgery on a young boy injured by shrapnel, the world outside our fragile canvas sanctuary violently erupted. A deafening blast, closer and more powerful than any we'd heard before, shook the very ground beneath us. The generator-powered lights exploded, plunging us into terrifying, suffocating darkness. Dust and debris rained down. And then the screams began anew, a chorus of pure terror, as our hospital, the place of healing, became the target. The blackness that swallowed me after the explosion was absolute, a suffocating void. When consciousness seeped back, it was in agonizing fragments, each one a fresh wave of pain. A high-pitched ringing filled my ears. Dust, thick and gritty, coated my tongue and stung my nostrils. I was lying on something hard and uneven, my limbs a symphony of aches, my head throbbing with a relentless beat. For a timeless moment, I didn't know who I was, or where. There was only pain, confusion, and a primal, suffocating fear. Slowly, a pinpoint of awareness pierced the gloom. Mia. Dr. Mia Carter. The field hospital. The surgery. The bomb. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed its way up my throat as I realized I was trapped, pinned by heavy debris I couldn't yet see. Breathe, Mia, breathe, I coached myself. Sarah? I croaked, my voice barely a whisper. A weak groan answered from nearby. My MSF colleague was alive. Can you move? I asked. Pinned, she rasped. My legs. I can't feel them. Her words sent a fresh spear of fear through me. We exchanged what little information and encouragement we could in the terrifying, dust-filled darkness, waiting for a rescue that felt like it might never come. Hours, or perhaps mere minutes later, time had warped into an elastic, meaningless concept, a sliver of light pierced our tomb. Hope flared. We heard shouts, the scraping of metal. Hands, strong and urgent, began to pull away the twisted canvas and steel that had entombed us. Pulled out into the harsh, unforgiving daylight, the scene was one of utter devastation. Where orderly medical tents had stood just hours before, there was now a smoking, chaotic ruin. Twisted cots, scattered supplies, and the dark, ominous stains of blood were everywhere. The air was thick with the cries of the wounded and the frantic shouts of rescuers. I saw Dr. Amin, our local lead doctor, his gentle face now a mask of grim determination, moving through the wreckage, directing aid, his presence a small beacon in the overwhelming chaos. He knelt beside me as I lay on a makeshift stretcher. Dr. Carter, you are alive, he said, his voice hoarse with emotion and dust. Sarah is injured, her leg, but she is stable. We have lost many. Too many. My left arm was clearly broken, throbbing with intense pain, and a wave of nausea confirmed a concussion. We were transported to a makeshift triage center hastily set up in an old, partially damaged schoolhouse. The following days were a relentless blur of treating an endless stream of casualties from the hospital bombing and ongoing shelling. The suffering was immense, the resources scarce. One evening, as Dr. Amin was quietly speaking with a grieving mother, a new wave of horror struck him personally. His own 6-year-old son, caught in nearby crossfire, had been killed. I saw him later, emerging from the small room that served as our morgue, his face utterly ravaged by a grief too profound for words. He saw me, his eyes hollowed but blazing with a desperate plea, and he grabbed my arm. Please, Dr. Carter, he whispered, his voice breaking, save the children, save my country. His raw agony, his unbearable loss, shattered the last of my own carefully constructed composure. Sarah, her own leg badly injured in the bombing, her face pale with pain, shared my silent, helpless tears. We thought we had witnessed the deepest pit of despair, but the war was relentless. The next day, Sarah, despite her injury, insisted we go to oversee a critical humanitarian supply drop on the city's outskirts. Someone has to, Mia, she'd said, her usual pragmatism tinged with weariness. As we were returning in the back of a rattling supply truck, a series of deafening explosions erupted from the direction of the schoolhouse, our new, fragile hospital. Before the horrifying implication could fully register, our truck was violently hit by shrapnel from a nearby blast. My world went black. In that last, fleeting second of consciousness, my satellite phone, tucked securely in my pocket, vibrated and lit up with an incoming call. The name on the screen, blurred but unmistakable, Ethan. With a final, instinctive movement, I fumbled and pressed accept just as the darkness consumed me. I awoke, disoriented, the following evening. I was in a different small medical tent, and 4-line taped to my hand. A young boy with solemn, dark eyes, no older than 6, sat silently beside my cot, watching me. When he saw my eyes focus, a shy but radiant smile lit his small face. He darted out, returning moments later with a local doctor, a man named Marcus Cole. Dr. Cole gently examined me, confirming I had no new major injuries beyond extensive bruising and the re-aggravation of my broken arm and concussion. My mind, still foggy, raced to the immediate past. "Doctor," I asked, my voice thick with dread, "the schoolhouse?" The explosions I heard. Dr. Cole's grave silence, the profound sadness in his eyes, was answer enough. It, too, had been destroyed. A wave of utter despair washed over me. All our efforts, the lives we fought to save, the risks we took, it all felt like meaningless dust blown away by an indifferent wind. For the first time, I truly questioned the purpose of our being there, the value of our sacrifices if everything could be so brutally and easily erased. Dr. Cole's voice pulled me back. "Miss Carter," he said gently, "we received word some hours ago. Someone claiming to be your family is waiting for you at the embassy of the neighboring country. It's about 5 kilometers from here. If you feel strong enough, I can arrange transport." Family? My parents couldn't possibly know. It had to be Ethan. That call. But why would he come to this war-ravaged hell? I pushed the confusing thought aside, too exhausted to process it. My gaze fell on the little boy, Hami, who had quietly returned to my side. He had been the one to alert Dr. Cole that I was awake. I managed a weak smile and offered him an apple from a small care package Dr. Cole had left. Hami looked at the fruit, a rare treat in this place of scarcity, then carefully wiped it on his dusty shirt and tucked it into his pocket. "For my mom," he whispered in broken English, his dark eyes earnest. His simple, selfless act, his quiet resilience in the face of such devastation, was a tiny, poignant ember of humanity in a world consumed by darkness. Once Dr. Cole left the small tent, quiet descended, broken only by the distant, unsettling sounds of the war-torn city. My thoughts kept returning to Ethan. Why was he here? The unanswered call before I lost consciousness now felt like a strange, surreal dream. I tried to push the image of his name on my phone screen away, focusing instead on the small boy, Hami, who still sat patiently by my cot. His presence was a quiet anchor in the overwhelming chaos. I slowly got out of bed, my body protesting with aches and pains, and walked to the tent opening. Outside, the evening sky was a bruised purple, the air thick with the usual yellow dust. Chinese flags, a symbol of the aid efforts, fluttered gently above several tents. In the distance, I could see the sprawling, desperate lights of the refugee camps. That's where Sarah would be. Hami joined me, his tiny brows furrowed in a serious expression that seemed too old for his young face. I felt a sudden urge to offer him some comfort, some lightness. Crouching down to his level, I asked, "Hami, what do you want to be when you grow up?" He looked at me, his dark eyes thoughtful. Then, a faint, bitter smile touched his lips. I expected a child's usual dreams, a doctor, a pilot, something grand. But his answer struck me to the core. "In F City," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "kids don't grow up." My hand, lifted to smooth his dusty hair, froze. My own smile faltered. A sharp sting hit my nose. This child, born into war, raised in its shadow, was no more than 5 or 6 years old, yet he spoke with a chilling awareness of his own fragile mortality. I forced a smile, trying to treat his words as a childish fancy. "No, Hami," I said gently. "You will grow up. And when you do, you can come to my country. I'll show you our beautiful land." At the mention of China, his eyes finally brightened. He told me his mother had spoken of it, of giant pandas, the Great Wall, and delicious food. He wanted to see it all. I nodded and extended my pinky finger. "We do this in my country," I explained. "It's a pinky promise. It means we've made a deal, and whoever breaks it, gets punished." With a tiny, excited voice, Hamai locked his pinky with mine. At that moment, I truly believed the war would end, that there would be a future for him. The next morning, a battered vehicle arranged by Dr. Cole took me towards the embassy. As I arrived, my heart pounded. There, in the tense, formal reception room, were my parents, their faces etched with worry and sleeplessness. And with them, looking entirely out of place in his rumpled, expensive suit, was Ethan. He had actually come. My mother pulled me into a trembling hug, tears streaming down her face. "Mia, you're safe, thank God." My father, his voice thick with emotion, pleaded, "This place is too dangerous. Please, come home with us." The fear and dread I'd been suppressing surged. I almost nodded, almost agreed, but then I remembered Hamai's small, hopeful face, the apple tucked in his pocket, his quiet words. It wasn't time to leave yet. The bullets hadn't yet turned into doves. "I'll be fine, Mom," I said, trying to sound reassuring. "Our team is staying at a nearby refugee camp now. It's much safer there." My mother looked unconvinced and turned to Ethan, clearly hoping he could persuade me. They didn't know we were divorced. Ethan and I had, by some unspoken agreement, kept that from our families. I finally faced him. After just 2 weeks apart, Ethan looked years older. His eyes were bloodshot, ringed with fatigue. Stubble covered his usually clean-shaven jaw. His blue pinstriped shirt was creased, his suit disheveled. "Mia, listen to your parents. Let's go home," he said, his voice low and strained. I shook my head, meeting his gaze calmly. "I'm not leaving." I didn't want to cause my parents more pain by revealing the truth about our divorce, not after they'd traveled so far, endured so much worry. Seeing my resolve, Ethan lowered his head briefly, then addressed my parents with a forced confidence. "Don't worry. I'll talk to Mia outside. If she insists on staying, I'll stay with her, ensure she's safe." I was surprised, and a little disgusted by what felt like a performance. Once outside the embassy, under the pale Mediterranean sky, I couldn't hold back. "So, Ethan, when did you become the devoted type? Just going to abandon Chloe and the baby to risk your life with me?" He didn't respond, just looked at me, his eyes filled with a confusing mix of guilt and a tenderness that made my skin crawl. "Please don't look at me like that," I said, trying to keep the revulsion from my voice. But my words seemed to wound him. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. How could you come to such a dangerous place alone, Mia? Do you have any idea, when you answered the phone that day but didn't speak, all I heard was bombing. I thought you were dead." He turned away, wiping his eyes. "I didn't sleep. I got on the next flight. Mia, if you'll come back, I'll agree to anything." The evening air was mild, but a chill ran down my spine. 3 years ago, we'd been here on our honeymoon, full of dreams. Those vows were now dust. I looked at the tired, handsome man before me and let out a cold laugh. "What if I told you to make Chloe get an abortion?" His expression froze, his face twisting in conflict. He hadn't expected that. After a long pause, he looked up, his voice low but firm. "Okay. I'll make her terminate the pregnancy. But you have to come back with me, right now." I scoffed. "Ethan, who do you really love? You say you love me, but you cheated and asked for a divorce 5 times. You say you love Chloe, but you'd make her abort your child for me. You don't even know who you are anymore." I shook my head. "I'm not going back with you. I still have work to do here. As for whether you stay or not, that's your own." Suddenly, the sharp crack of explosions nearby cut me short. The blasts were coming from the direction of the border refugee camp. Sarah! She was there. Panic seized me. "Ethan," I gasped, grabbing his arm, all my earlier anger forgotten. "Didn't you say you'd do anything? Forget Chloe, forget everything. Just take me to that camp. Right now." Ethan stared at me, shocked by my sudden shift, then his face hardened with anger. "Mia, are you insane? You're rushing to die. You almost died once already, but I wasn't listening." The distant flames painted the sky, and a deeper dread consumed me. If you won't take me, I'll find my own way. I stormed back into the embassy, but the staff confirmed no drivers were available, it was too dangerous. Eventually, Ethan relented. But when we reached the road leading to the border, it was completely blocked, impassable due to the fighting. We waited the entire night. The wind howled. The bombing eventually stopped, but the road remained closed. Exhausted, I crouched by a wall. Ethan sat beside me, took off his suit jacket, and draped it over my shoulders. You should leave tomorrow, he said quietly. Stay in this country, where it's safer. He didn't respond to my attempts to argue, just gazed at the brilliant stars in the vast, dark sky. The last time I saw stars like this, he said softly, was in middle school. You were with me then too. I remembered. We were classmates from a small village, hiking home through the hills on weekends under skies just like this, long before city lights and smog had dimmed our world, and perhaps, ourselves. His gaze shifted from the stars to me. The regret in his eyes was palpable. Mia, I'm not going back, he said, his voice firm. Whether I live or die, whether you think I'm a hypocrite, none of that matters. I just want to stay here, walk this path with you. He sounded sincere. I looked away, not responding, a confusing mix of old pain and a flicker of something unidentifiable stirring within me. I curled up, resting my head on my knees, and eventually, exhaustion claimed me. By noon the next day, the road to the refugee camp finally reopened. Ethan drove us. The scene that greeted us was one of utter devastation. The camp was a ruin of smoldering debris and collapsed shelters. Dust choked the air. A few survivors picked through the rubble with bare hands, their faces blank with shock. Cries and moans echoed from beneath the wreckage. A desperate refugee, his eyes wild, rushed at me for food. Ethan intervened. I understood the man's despair and shared what little water and bread we had. We searched frantically, my heart pounding for Sarah. Finally, near the edge of the ruined camp, we saw her. She was alive, her injured leg bandaged, her face pale but her spirit unbroken as she tended to another victim. Relief washed over me. Sarah, I'm here, I called. She managed a weak smile. I took over treating the wounded, working for hours as the sun began to set. When I finished with the last patient, Sarah, watching me, said softly, Mia, you were born to be a doctor. You have to keep going. As we prepared to find a place to rest, my foot kicked something in the dust. An apple, bruised and caked with dirt. The apple Hami had saved for his mother. A cold dread seized me. I scanned the nearby rubble, my breath catching. There, under a pile of debris, I saw a glimpse of a familiar Mickey Mouse t-shirt. Hame. My mind went blank with horror. Like someone possessed, I clawed at the rubble, my hands raw and bleeding, Ethan and Sarah trying to understand my frantic cries. Finally, I uncovered his small, cold body. He was gone. Children in F City, don't grow up, his words echoed in my mind, a devastating prophecy fulfilled. That evening, under a sky indifferent to our sorrow, I dug a small grave with rocks and laid Hami to rest, placing 2 fresh apples before the tiny mound. One for him, one for his mother. The trauma of Hami's death, piled onto everything else, shattered me. Back in my home country, a diagnosis of severe PTSD followed. Ethan, who had returned with me, was a constant, quiet presence during those dark months of treatment. He was changed, the restlessness gone, replaced by a heavy remorse. He never spoke of Chloe, only focused on my care. One evening, as news of a ceasefire in country F finally played on the television, he simply said, I'm sorry, Mia. For everything. I offered no response. My world had shrunk to the 4 walls of my recovery. Then came another blow. News reports listed MSF casualties from the FG conflict. Comrade Sarah Evans, my friend, my rock, had lost her life in the line of duty, killed weeks after I'd left. The world tilted again. That same day, lost in a fresh wave of grief and despair, I wandered out of the house and into the path of a speeding car. In a blur, Ethan shoved me violently aside, taking the full impact himself. When I woke in a hospital, my parents told me Ethan was in the ICU, critically injured. The driver of the car, apprehended at the scene, had been Chloe. Consumed by a twisted rage after Ethan left her, and after, as I later learned, he'd made her terminate her pregnancy as I'd bitterly suggested, she had tried to kill me. Ethan survived but was left permanently disabled, confined to a wheelchair. Chloe was sentenced to life in prison. The weight of it all was immense. Just as I felt I was drowning, a fragile lifeline appeared. A relative of Sarah's contacted me. Sarah had a 5-year-old daughter, Lily, with no one to truly care for her. Without hesitation, I said, "I'll take her." Lily's arrival changed everything. Her laughter, her resilience, her uncanny resemblance to Sarah, began to slowly mend the broken pieces of my heart. We moved to a quiet coastal city. I dedicated myself to raising her, telling her nightly stories of her brave mother, the hero doctor who walked the world. 2 years later, peace had formally come to the land that was once Country F. That summer, I took Lily, then in 3rd grade, on a trip to Beijing. While climbing the Great Wall, a small foreign boy, about 6 years old, shyly asked me to take a picture of him and his mother. His bright, obsidian eyes, so like Hama's, stunned me for a moment. As I clicked the photo, capturing their happy smiles against the ancient stones, a bittersweet pang went through me. Hama had once promised he'd come to China, to see this very wall. He never made it, but here, in the smile of another child, in the enduring hope for a future, a tiny part of his dream, and perhaps mine, lived on. If this story resonates with you, let us know in the comments how you'd handle something like this. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.